Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into a technology that has literally completely transformed the skies above us in just a handful of years. I mean, we're talking about drones, right? But listen, we're not just looking at these things as simple toys or little flying cameras today. Oh no. We are going to unpack the entire drone ecosystem. We're going to see how these machines evolved into this massively complex network that spans everything from hardcore military operations and really robust enterprise solutions, all the way to fiercely competitive consumer tech. And ultimately, we'll look at how they are creating some pretty profound societal and legal impacts that genuinely affect every single one of us. So here's our roadmap for today. We've got 5 main stops. 1. The ultimate drone spectrum. 2. Enterprise versus consumer drones. 3. The brand battleground. 4. Inside FPV customization. And finally, number 5, the privacy paradox. All right, let's just dive right in.
Starting off with Section 1, the ultimate drone spectrum, classifying the skies.
You know, we throw around the word drone all the time, and usually we picture that little plastic quadcopter we picked up at the electronics store, right? But the US military and really the broader aviation industry, they use a different term, UAS, which stands for Unmanned Aerial Systems. And that S is absolutely crucial. A drone isn't just a physical vehicle floating up there in the sky. It's an entire integrated system. It's the aircraft, sure, but it's also the ground control station where the pilot sits and the really complex communication links connecting the two together. You literally can't have the aircraft functioning without the data link and the controller. It's the whole shebang. And when you look at how the Department of Defense classifies these systems, you start to grasp the sheer massive scale of what a drone can actually be. They break it down into 5 distinct groups. If you look down at Group 1, you've got systems like the RQ-11 Raven. These are tiny, weighing under 20 pounds, flying pretty low, and you basically launch them by hand. But wow, as we move down this table to Group 5, we are looking at a completely different beast. Take the NQ-9 Reaper, for example. We are talking about a multi-ton aircraft weighing well over 1,320 pounds, cruising at altitudes way up above 18,000 feet and hitting some serious speeds. Now, understanding this massive spectrum is super important for us because the high-end tech developed for a massive Group 5 Reaper, that eventually trickles down and directly influences the drones that you and I can go buy off the shelf. Which brings us to Section 2, Enterprise versus consumer drones, toys versus tools. So when we look at the commercial landscape, there's a really stark contrast between consumer models and enterprise workhorses. Consumer drones are primarily built for, simplicity, portability, and just getting some great footage. They usually have fixed cameras and single sensors. And hey, if a sensor fails, your flight is pretty much over. But enterprise drones, they are built with a fundamentally different philosophy, which is basically failure is not an option. They feature modular payloads so you can swap out specialized sensors. They use hardcore navigation systems like RTK or PPK, which, to put that in perspective, means their GPS is accurate down to the exact centimeter, not just a general 10-foot radius. And critically, they've got redundant backup systems. Think dual IMUs or internal orientation sensors. So if one completely fails mid-flight, the drone doesn't drop out of the sky. The backup kicks in and it stays in the air. Now, why do those crazy enterprise specs actually matter? Well, because out in the real world, these aren't toys. They're absolutely critical infrastructure tools. For example, you need that centimeter-level precision for construction mapping so engineers can calculate exact volumetric data of a building site. You need those modular payloads to attach thermal cameras or LiDAR to inspect miles of oil pipelines. In agriculture, they're using multispectral cameras to monitor crop health in ways the human eye literally can't even see. And for public safety, having reliable drones that can fly automated routes beyond visual line of sight, or BVLS, is an absolute game changer for search and rescue operations. Moving right along to Section 3, the brand battleground, choosing your consumer drone. All right, let's take a look at DJI's current lineup, because this just brilliantly illustrates how manufacturers segment the consumer market. Notice that weight column right there. The DJI Mini 4 Pro sits at just under 249 grams. And guys, that is not a random number. It's explicitly designed to slide right under the 250-gram legal weight limit in a lot of regions, which means way fewer regulations for beginners. It's a huge selling point. Then if you step up to the Air 3, you add some weight, sure, but you get a dual camera system and the longest battery life of the bunch. And finally, sitting at the top, the Mavic 3 Pro weighs almost a full kilogram, but boasts this massive triple camera system with a pro-level Hasselblad sensor. So basically, your very specific needs, whether that's avoiding legal red tape, maximizing flight time, or chasing true cinematic perfection, will completely dictate exactly which model you're going to choose. And let's be real, across the board, DJI remains the undisputed gold standard in the consumer and prosumer space right now. For photographers, vloggers, and filmmakers who just demand cinematic depth, rock-solid reliability, and an incredibly smooth app experience, DJI easily offers the best overall value. But, and this is a big but, they definitely aren't the only player in town. Enter Autel Robotics. Autel is basically the go-to brand for pilots who want those super high-end specs. We're talking stunning 6K and 8K cameras, but who absolutely refuse to be locked down by restrictive software ecosystems. See, one of Autel's biggest selling points is their total lack of geofencing. DJI will physically prevent your drone from taking off in certain restricted zones using their software. Autel, on the other hand, trusts the pilot to follow the law, so they offer a much more open flight experience. And then we have Skydio, taking a completely different approach. They don't really focus on having the most cinematic camera on the market. Instead, they focus heavily on AI. A Skydio drone utilizes these crazy 360-degree vision sensors to practically fly itself. It wins the autonomy category hands down, making it the ultimate tool for action sports. If you're mountain biking super fast through a really dense forest, a Skydio is going to autonomously dodge all those branches and perfectly track you without you ever touching a joystick. All right, Section 4, Inside FPV Customization, Building the Perfect Beast. Now we are leaving the off-the-shelf consumer market and entering the highly customized, totally DIY world of FPV, or first-person view drones. In FPV, the most crucial thing is your vision system, what you actually see inside your goggles. And pilots face a massive trade-off here. On one hand, you've got the old-school analog systems. They broadcast over a 5.8 gigahertz frequency and offer near zero latency, like your response time is practically instant. But the downside? You are staring at a really staticky, poor 480p image. On the flip side, you have modern digital systems like DJI's O3 and O4 or competitors like Walksnail. These digital systems deliver stunning, crystal-clear 4K 120 frames per second video right to your eyeballs. It's gorgeous. However, all that heavy processing can introduce a tiny bit of latency, and they are usually locked down closed ecosystems. And just as important as your vision is the radio control link, basically how your actual controller talks to the drone. For years, TBS Crossfire was the absolute king of long-range, stable connections. But recently, this open-source project called Express LRS, or ELRS, has completely disrupted the space. It's spread like wildfire. ELRS is incredibly cheap and offers an ultra-fast refresh rate, updating the signal up to 1,000 times per second. That means your stick movements translate to drone movements almost instantaneously. Alternatively, if you just hate wiring and soldering, you can use the DJI remote controller, which pairs seamlessly with their video systems, but again, that locks you completely into their proprietary ecosystem. The whole point of FPV is picking the exact components that perfectly match your specific flying style. Finally, Section 5, the privacy paradox, law, safety, and surveillance. To close out our explainer today, we really have to pull back the curtain and look at the profound societal consequences of having all this high-end technology hovering right above us. Let's look at this absolutely fascinating doctrinal analysis that was recently published in the International Journal on Science and Technology. They specifically evaluated drone regulations in the UAE, and the researchers uncovered a massive, fundamental legal gap, one that actually exists in a lot of countries worldwide. See, aviation laws are strictly focused on airspace safety, making sure drones don't crash into airplanes or fall on people's heads. Meanwhile, cybercrime laws are totally focused on protecting digital data and preventing hacking. This creates a really fragmented blind spot around non-consensual aerial surveillance. Think about it. If a drone is hovering safely right outside your 30th floor apartment window, it isn't necessarily violating aviation safety, and it isn't hacking your computer. This leaves a glaring regulatory gap regarding your physical privacy. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the theory of panopticism, which was famously discussed by the philosopher Michel Foucault. Foucault argued that when visibility is asymmetrical, meaning you can be watched at literally any time, but you can't actually see the person watching you, it inherently changes how you act. As he put it, surveillance produces self-discipline. The mere presence of these high-tech, virtually silent drones up in the sky, whether they're being flown by hobbyists, massive enterprises, or the government, actually forces citizens to unconsciously police their own behavior in their own private spaces. It's kind of wild to think about. So, I really want to leave you with this provocative thought to ponder today. As drone technology continues to accelerate at breakneck speed, bringing us smarter AI, tinier form factors, and even sharper cameras, and as our legal frameworks scramble to play catch up, what exactly are we actually trying to regulate? Are we trying to regulate the physical drone flying up there in the sky? Or are we trying to regulate the massive amounts of intimate data it's quietly collecting about us? The answer to that question is really going to define the future of our privacy. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. I hope you found this deep dive as totally fascinating as I did. Keep looking up, and I will catch you in the next one.